And I kind of got used to the occasional Tuesday and Wednesday game, right? I was in the middle of that pandemic and watched some football in your living room. Yeah, I do think you're going to see a step up. For example, the Giants are not opening training camp practices to fans. They are having what they're calling a fan fest at the stadium. They're saying 50,000 is the capacity for that, and the tickets are gone. The Jets are having fans at their facility for training camp. Those tickets also gone for however many sessions they're opening to fans. So I think there's excitement from the fan level. I know there's excitement from the club level.
Jody Mack and John McMullen, your Birds 365 guys here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. We are excited on this Football Friday to bring in our next guest. I just had to find a day where they weren't using their insights on Good Morning Football. I found a opening on a Football Friday. Kim Jones from the NFL Network, good enough to join us here on Birds 365. How are you, Kimmy?
I'm good, Jody. How are you?
Doing well. Good to have you, Kim. I guess we're going to start with the Giants. That's the team you're closest to. We'll get in, obviously, to some league issues as a whole. And I know Jody, my partner here, is not a big Daniel Jones fan, but I want to get your perspective. Obviously, the Giants invested a lot. Anytime you take a quarterback that high, we talk a lot about Jalen Hurts here in Philadelphia. He's pretty much got 1 year to prove himself. Do you think this is it for Daniel Jones? He's got to take a big step forward, or the Giants might start looking in a different direction come 2022?
I think the way the NFL works now, it almost dictates that, come through in your third year or we're going to look for your replacement. I will say this about Daniel Jones, and I never hear anyone talk about this. The question with Daniel Jones isn't necessarily about everything that goes into playing quarterback in terms of pocket presence, although there are real questions about that. Obviously, turnovers overall, fumbles in particular, he cleaned that up to some degree last season. But the biggest question with Daniel Jones is, can he win? He's won 30% of his games in his first 2 years. The Giants are 8-18 in his starts over his first 2 years. That number has to essentially flip itself at the very least coming into this season, I believe.
Did the Giants get Daniel Jones enough weapons to do just that? Because they made the effort. They spent a lot of money on Kenny Holiday. They bring in a tight end like Rudolph, who I think can help. They're going to be better just because they've got Saquon Barkley back. Did the Giants have enough weapons to give Jones the chance to flip that one-loss record?
They should. They should, Jody. The offensive line is still a question. It's very young. Dave Gettleman has gone the route of a very young line. And the Giants tell us they like their offensive line better than the rest of us, which explains why they're going with that young line. And we're going to have to see how that goes. Kenny Golladay, you have to hope, obviously, if you're the Giants, he stays healthy. Kadarius Toney was their first-round draft pick. He is an explosive weapon. He may help them first and foremost as a punt returner. We'll see about that. But certainly offensively, he should be the kind of weapon that can outquick opponents on the football field. So he could be very helpful. Rudolph, already as a Giant, has had a surgery. He says that he'll be ready to go for training camp. And then they'll hope that Evan Engram, who head coach Joe Judge loves Evan Engram. All of the noise that they would somehow part ways with Evan Engram was never going to happen because Judge likes everything about Evan except for the drop passes. He has to clean those up. And then the leader on that offense in terms of skill players remains Sterling Shepard, who's been a really good Giant for a number of years now.
Kim, you saw Joe Judge up close, obviously, as a rookie head coach. The Eagles are going to have a rookie head coach in Nick Sirianni. It's a big job. And, you've talked to a lot of head coaches over the years. I've talked to a lot of head coaches over the years. One thing they all say is, man, I didn't know how much non-football stuff I would have to deal with. How much more comfortable is Joe Judge? Have you noticed sort of that step forward as a second-year coach? And how did he handle the whole rookie season?
Yeah, I do think more comfortable for sure. And I also would note unfortunately for Philly fans, and I grew up as an Eagles fan in York, Pennsylvania, by the way, but you know, all of the other teams have gone through that first year with the new head coach thing, and they're going to have to go through it this season, perhaps surprisingly a little bit if you go back several months. So I do think there's something about all of that. I do think with Joe Judge, we saw him relax just a little bit. That's not necessarily in his nature, but just kind of be a little bit more comfortable. We obviously saw him an awful lot on Zooms. And you can kind of sort of assess someone via Zoom. It's not nearly as easy as you can in person. But yeah, I think that Joe Judge became more comfortable in the job. I think that his players respect him, which is obviously a big deal as well. I do think that the second year around will be easier, for lack of a better word, simply because he's done it before. I know I've been better always second job than I was first.
Kimmy, last year, I was impressed with Joe Judge. I thought that he did command the room and the players seemed to be busted it for him. And I thought for a first year out of the block, never even been a coordinator, he had a damn good year up until week 17, when I thought he got pretty whiny about the Eagles tanking the last game of the season, which they did. Oh, they absolutely tanked. I'm not saying he was inaccurate in his analysis of it, but it made it sound like, how could this happen to the Giants? They're below 500. If you're going back into the playoffs, I'm sorry, you don't get a pass for that. You don't get in just because somebody else decided to not play hard. So I didn't like the way Judge handled himself week 17. But I did the entire season up until that point. And a big part of it was, the relationship that he had with his players. Nick Sirianni is getting good reviews from some of his best players. Lane Johnson, Travis Kelce has come out, Jaden Kelce, and backed this guy. First time ever in the locker room, first week. How difficult is that? You've talked to the players over the years that you've been covering the National Football League. Do the players make that bar high? Do they need to be won over by the coach? Or do they have he's the guy in charge now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt? How tough is it for a first-year coach to win the trust of all his players?
Judy, I think it's a good question. And I think there's a mix there, because I do think football players are used to being coached, right? And they're used to being coached in a team concept for the most part. Obviously, they do their training on their own at times or with a select group of players. The quarterback might get his offensive skill players together, that sort of thing. But generally speaking, they're used to A, team concept, and B, being told what to do. And they go through their college careers, however long they stay in their college programs, with that in mind as well. So generally, I think in the NFL, there are players who want to fall in line. Now, we know that some say things coaches don't like, do things that coaches don't like, all of that stuff. Of course, that's going to happen. We're human. That's going to happen. But I do think football players want to be coached. They have been their whole life in that sport. You know, I do think there's a winning people over kind of thing. And I think Joe Judge did that fairly quickly with the New York Giants and the players who had been there, because they were coming off, in some cases, a Ben McAdoo, Pat Shurmur back-to-back coaching hires that were truly disastrous. Mm-hmm. So the players who knew of that were welcoming the change from Joe Judge. They knew that they needed more discipline. They needed to be told where the expectations were in order to become a winning program. The Giants have not yet become a winning program under Joe Judge, but I think enough of the players believe in what he is doing. And then the Giants certainly went out in this free agency and spent to a degree where they brought in what they believe are difference-making players, and we're going to see how that goes. But, and I'm sure we'll get to this, or I would guess we'll get to this, and if we don't, I should say it now. The whole offense for the New York Giants, in my opinion, hinges on two things. The offensive line being credible and competent, and we're not going to know that right away. And if we do know it right away, it may be a bad sign, but we're not going to know that right away. But Saquon Barkley being Saquon Barkley, that is the biggest boost Daniel Jones can get in his third season.
That's exactly where I was going, Kim. So I'm glad you brought it up. Saquon Barkley. I don't know if this is possible, but it certainly seems this way to me. It's the New York market, obviously, so you wouldn't think. You're talking about a guy immensely talented. You go back to his rookie season, forget about the rushing yards. He was about 1,300. I think he had 90 receptions. I mean, Malcolm Jenkins used to talk about that kid like, this guy's different. And Malcolm's been around for a while, and he's seen a lot of players. I feel like somehow nobody's talking about Saquon Barkley, and I don't understand it. I mean, this is the guy with the New York Giants. It's not about the free agents. It's not about Daniel Jones. They got to ride Saquon Barkley first and foremost. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And he has to be physically capable to do that, though. And I think that that's still a work in progress. Listen, Saquon trains incredibly hard. He's rehabbed this knee incredibly hard. But when I refer to his ACL, I always say his ACL plus, because he had more damage than, quote unquote, just the ACL. So I do think he will be cautious. The Giants will be cautious. I don't know that it's a slam dunk as we sit here today that he'll be ready for the opener. I do think he will be back and he will be very effective. And he will be an enormous boost to this team when he's back. I just don't know when we're going to see that. And I can't sit here as we're still in the month of July and tell you absolutely for certain he'll be out there for that opener against Denver.
Kimmy, you want to broaden the scope a little bit, take it across the league with you. The most discussed story all off season was this Rodgers guy in his neighborhood up there in Green Bay. Constant attention day in and day out. And of course, there's no resolution yet. At some point, there needs to be one. When is he going to show up at Packer camp? Never. Day one. Sometime before the first game of the season. Give us your best crystal ball as to when Mr. Rodgers will get back into his neighborhood in Green Bay.
Yeah, and it truly is a crystal ball, Jody, because I've never talked to Aaron Rodgers. I've never interviewed him. I've never been around him that I can remember. So he's one where I'm not speaking from any personal experience, unlike, say, Saquon, Odell, or the list, Michael Strahan. The list goes on of obviously Giants and Jets players where I could speak with some authority from knowing them a little bit. I've said all along, I think it'll be in those first days of training camp. I think he's enjoying watching everyone sweat. I said this on Good Morning Football the other day. What we're learning, what we have learned about Aaron Rodgers, he has something in common with the guy he replaced in Brett Favre. And I loved Brett Favre as a quarterback, as a viewer and lover of the NFL. I loved watching him play, but there was drama to Favre. He wanted to make sure he was needed and wanted. And he was, well, I'll take my ball and go to another place, or you'll trade me to another place. So, we're learning that Aaron Rodgers has a little bit of that in him as well. And Rodgers probably, when he joined this league, said, I'm not going to do what that guy did in some respects. And now he's doing exactly what Favre did. And obviously both Hall of Famers, so they can probably do whatever they want. But it has struck me that Aaron Rodgers has very much enjoyed sort of the twisting in the wind that his franchise has done this offseason.
Kim, the other big quarterback story around the league is even more uncertainty because of legal allegations and civil allegations with Deshaun Watson. So how much talk has there been at Good Morning Football? And, there's sort of this open secret that the Eagles will have interest if interest becomes even possible, but nobody knows. Nobody knows. It's kind of all, I think most of us expect he's going to be on the commissioner's exempt list. From the people you've talked to, what have you kind of heard about Deshaun Watson, where that's going to be? Is there just complete uncertainty?
Yeah, and what strikes me, guys, is it's gone very quiet now for 6 weeks or so, it feels like. Yeah. Summer goes quickly, Jody, as you know, and it's hard to remember exactly when things happen. But it's gone quiet, and I would be speculating on that one. I don't have a lot of inside information there. I've not even inquired, to be honest with you. So that one I don't have a lot of info for you about. It has gone quiet, which I think initially some folks thought, well, maybe there's a resolution in sight, but it's just more of it's gone quiet. So I don't really have an answer for you on that one.
Kimmy, let me ask you this question about first-time head coaches, because you got to experience Judge last year. We're dealing with Sirianni now. The other team, you said you cover from time to time. Jets, they've got a new head coach too. And most times you hear people talking about Robert Saleh and what he's going to do for the Jets. The word culture comes up, that he is going to instill a new culture, that the culture of the Jets has changed. sometimes that's right on point, and sometimes I feel that term is overused, but sometimes it's underused. Like here in Philadelphia, we don't talk about the culture that is going to be brought by Nick Sirianni. Why is that? Why is it sometimes the change of culture is the most important thing, and sometimes change of culture is an afterthought? Why do you think that changes from team to team when the coaching change goes into place?
Well, I think it's based on need, and the Jets needed to change, period. Whether it's culture, whether it's the drapery building, whether it's, you know, the meeting rooms and the way players are assigned seats. I mean, they need a change. So, and they got it with Robert Saleh. I'll tell you this, in the middle of June, when they were finishing up their mandatory mini camp, we had our most recent opportunity via Zoom to talk to Robert Saleh. And I asked him, and I couched the question this way by saying, we are going to ask you about a lot of firsts, because he's not a first-time coach, but he certainly is a first-time head coach. And I said, how would you characterize your first spring as a head coach in the National Football League? And he went on to talk about Joe Douglas, the GM, and his staff. He talked about his own staff. He talked about his players. He never talked about himself. I then saw him on the practice field that day, and he came over and briefly greeted members of the media, myself included. And when he came over to me, I said, I asked you a question particularly about you today, and you talked about everyone but you. And he said, it's not about me. And he pointed to the field behind him and said, it's all about these guys. And I think with Robert Saleh, you're seeing someone who has a great appreciation, I have to believe, of who he is. He's a motivator. Players want to play for him. Francisco, we've seen that beyond. We now are seeing that with the Jets. And yet he comes across guys as completely egoless, which is not always that common in the NFL or in really any professional sports when you look at the coaches. So I find him to be intriguing, and I have said this publicly several times. He and Joe Douglas have already done what the Jets haven't had since Tannenbaum Rex all those years ago. And that is a front office and a coaching staff led by the head coach who are tied at the hip and who are in concert with each other and not trying to work, you know, by butting heads with each other. That's incredibly important in the NFL. And I give Saleh and Douglas, who hired Saleh with Christopher Johnson, I give them a lot of credit for finding that already, because the Jets haven't had it in a long time.
You mentioned Joe Douglas there a couple times, Kim.
Yep.
I have tremendous respect for Joe from his time here in Philadelphia. I think he's a great personnel evaluator. Obviously, he came into a very difficult position with Adam Gase and Sam Darnold, who he didn't pick. Now he's got the guys in place he wants, and Robert Saleh and Zach Wilson. Does the clock start now for Joe Douglas? How much is the honeymoon over? Has it got to be moving in the right direction for the New York Jets?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great way to phrase all of that. This is it now. Joe Douglas now does have his folks in place. We're going to see a rookie quarterback who, let's face it, is going to struggle at times. He also has some potential that the Jets obviously love. They wouldn't have picked him second overall without seeing all of that potential. But he's going to struggle at times. But one thing we've already learned about Zach Wilson is he's a film junkie. He came to the Jets with that reputation from BYU. He's living up to that reputation. He seems to be all about football. You hear that a lot about players. Coaches obviously love the player who's like that. He's not going to be, distracted in his free time and that sort of thing, or at least does not appear to be that kind of a guy. And they have a lot of new pieces around him. I will say this, because I'm going to say this every time I'm asked about the Jets until I'm proven otherwise. Watch Elijah Moore, the receiver from Ole Miss. He and Zach Wilson already had, in the practices and mini camps I saw, a connection. And there's something about the way Moore catches a football. He is that almost go-go what is it? What was it? The go-go gadget?
Go-go gadget, yeah. I got it.
Has that ability to extend and very quickly snatch the ball. I saw that in every practice from the rookie, and it's going to be very interesting to see him this season.
Jimmy, I want your take on the return of the fans for the 2021 season. Last year, none of us knew when the season got underway what it was going to be like playing in mostly empty stadiums, minimal amount of fans let in most of the stadiums. I did not think the level of play last year was bad. I thought it was very comparable with previous seasons. It was weird, but the quality of play was good. This year, now that fans are going to be back in the stands, everyone's speculating, the quality play is going to be increased. It's going to be great. The players are going to be psyched because they're going to hear the adulation from the fans. If we didn't see that much of a drop-off in the quality of play when nobody was there, should we expect a huge step up in the quality of play just because we're getting the fans back? That seems a little counterintuitive to me.
And I kind of got used to the occasional Tuesday and Wednesday game, right? I was in the middle of that pandemic and watch some football in your living room. Yeah, I do think you're going to see a step up. For example, the Giants are not opening training camp practices to fans. They are having what they're calling a fan fest at the stadium. They're saying 50,000 is the capacity for that, and the tickets are gone. The Jets are having fans at their facility for training camp. Those tickets also gone for however many sessions they're opening to fans. So I think there's excitement from the fan level. I know there's excitement from the club level. I will tell you this, the one time I saw the lack of fans affect a game was when Tampa Bay was at the Giants, MetLife Stadium, somewhere in the middle of the season. I can't remember exactly which week. And Tampa Bay was sleepwalking. And I asked Jason Pierre-Paul, who I've known forever and who was actually a good friend of mine. I asked him after the game, I said, what was going on there? He said, there was no atmosphere. And, you know, some of those defensive guys in particular, as you two know, play off that so much. And, you know, it's not a great excuse, by the way, that Tampa Bay lost that game. But sitting in that stadium that day in the press box, I felt that as I was watching that game. You know, we're not going to have that anymore, thank goodness, or at least we don't think so. And I think that's a really good thing. It's a great thing all around. It's a great thing all around. And then when people have asked me, you know, here and there, occasionally on an interview, but just in life, have asked me about getting back to normalcy, which obviously I hope we're still on that path, and I believe we are. I said, when football stadiums are full this fall, we're going to be back to normalcy. And NFL stadiums are all allowed to capacity. I have to believe an awful lot of college stadiums are, and I stand by that. I think that that's going to be a great sight for all of us and great listening to the crowd for all of us, because I think we did miss that. I don't think it gives teams building excuses, Jody, but I did think that we missed that.
Kim, last one from me, because you brought up the Super Bowl champions and one of their low points of the season. But I want to talk about their high points, and I want to talk about Tom Brady, because Tom is going to be 44 early next month. 44 years old. Now, he won his 7th Super Bowl title in his first year in Tampa Bay. Now, we also find out, oh, by the way, he had a torn MCL. Are we all just kidding ourselves? Are we all just going through the motions, and Tom's going to be there with number 8 at 44 years old? Or when, and I know this is speculation, but Kim, Father Time catches us all. What the hell is he doing with Tom Brady? What is going on with this guy?
What is his method? The TB12 method?
TB12, yeah.
When I used to be in New England, before NFL Network hired Mike Giardi, who does a great job for us, and he's based in New England, I used to go to New England a lot. The Jets and Giants weren't keeping me home. The Bills weren't these Bills yet. So I was in New England a lot, and there is a TB12 method store in that Patriots Place complex. I should have gone a long time ago. I don't know how to explain him. He's a winner, obviously, at the ultimate level. And I mean that beyond the number of Super Bowls and everything. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not sure anyone knows how to explain it.
Timmy, as you mentioned this year, getting back out on the road, full stadiums and the like. Is there one place, you stick to the Northeast, do a lot of Jets, Giants, as you mentioned, up to New England, come down the Turnpike to go Philadelphia. If you get a road assignment this year, anywhere you specifically want to go, a team or maybe even a stadium? Because we got some brand new stadiums in the National Football League opened up in the last year or two, Vegas, Los Angeles, like anything you'd be volunteering for a potential road trip for Kim Jones this year.
Well, I just actually got my first assignment yesterday. It is Buffalo. July, I think 29th to 31st. The 31st NFL Network is going to have coverage at every single training camp. All 30
right.
Going to be bananas in a very good way. And I'll be at the Bills for that. I'm really excited. I haven't seen the Bills this offseason. I covered an awful lot of their games last year because they're really, really good. And they advanced so far in the playoffs. But listen, I'm cool with what I've got, Jody. I get to see the Bills, get to see the Jets, Giants. I'm more than happy to go to the Washington football team and the Eagles.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't hear Eagles.
We have a couple reporters, Mike Garafolo included, who are very close to the Eagles. So sometimes I end up in Washington, he's in Philly, that kind of thing. But I'm more than happy to kind of stick to my little corridor here. I'm hoping to see the Giants with their practices during training camp at Cleveland. I've asked to do that. I was preliminarily told yes, so we'll see how that goes. But lots of teams doing that practicing against another team kind of thing. That's interesting to me, coming back into this much more normal times that so many coaches seem to be taking advantage of that. And those are always fun to watch. They're always fun to watch.
Yeah, everyone said forever, we got to play less preseason games. Well, they cut preseason games, so they schedule scrimmages instead. Right. They like the work. They just don't want to make it an official game. And, Kimmy, if you're going to Buffalo in a J month, better doing it in July than January. Yes. So be thankful that you're going to Buffalo. You might be back there in January too, but July, Buffalo's not a bad place to be. Jimmy, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board. We'll tap into you from time to time when we got closer to the season. Thanks for hopping on Birds 365.
Thanks, guys, very much.
That is Kim Jones. Does a great job covering the National Football League for the NFL Network. And, she's been a New York/Philly. She told you she's a York, PA girl.
I told you, Garafolo. Eagles and Garafolo. But Kim, I've seen Kim at the Eagles occasionally. But yeah, it's more Mike, and there's a reason for that, by the way.
Yeah, he's got pretty good contacts here. But Kimmy gave us some good insight on the Giants and the National Football League in general. We thank her much for hopping aboard. All right, Mac and Mac, McMullen and McMullen coming back. I think we'll put a bow on this.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.